Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into my week 6 edition of my top waiver wire targets and streamable defenses. It's kind of crazy that we're already at week 6 and we're in October already. This season is already flying by, almost reaching the midpoint. Something that just hit me. But yeah, anyways, let me go ahead and dive right into today's video. As you guys know, I'm gonna start with my top waiver wire targets. I got a repeat name from last week. I got a couple tight ends I'm suggesting this week. So yeah, and just as a reminder, and just in case we do have any first-time listeners, my waiver wire targets, they do have to be available in at least 50% of the leagues on ESPN. So there's a good chance they're available for you to pick up tonight or even throughout the week if you do miss out on some players you're targeting on the waivers. With that being said, as I always do, starting at the quarterback position, my top quarterback out of the week, I am going to go with Sam Darnold. He's only rostered on 14.4% of the rosters right now. I definitely was a non-believer in the Sam Darnold experience in Seattle, but right now it's looking like it's paying off for Seattle. This past weekend against the Bucs in that awesome game between him and Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold threw for 341 yards and had 4 touchdowns. Now, when you look at his last 4 games, he's thrown for at least 215 yards. In his last 4 games, he's thrown at least 2 touchdowns in 3 of those 4 games. And he does draw a decent matchup this weekend. They are playing the Jaguars, who have allowed the 11th most points per game against quarterbacks this year. My running back out of the week, we do now know officially who it will be the lead running back while Trey Benson is sitting on the IR for the Cardinals. It's going to be Michael Carter. He's rostered on 41.9% of the rosters. This past weekend, he ran the ball 18 times, only got 51 yards, but he did get a touchdown. What you like to see, he was involved in the passing attack as well. He had 5 receptions for 22 yards on 5 targets against the Titans this past weekend. And then we all saw that DeMarcado dropped the ball before the end zone. So that's just going to lead to him being more of the hogging all the touches out of the backfield. Honestly, DeMarcado's probably not going to get many touches this weekend. Just comparing it to the Adonai Mitchell situation with the Colts, who dropped the ball the previous week. This past weekend, the only reason why Mitchell ended up playing in the game was A, because Alec Pierce was inactive for his concussion, and B, the Colts were beating up on the Raiders so much they had to pull their starters, so AD ended up getting some playing time. With that being said, though, Carter does have a tough matchup this weekend. They do face the Colts, who have allowed the 7th fewest points per game against the running back position. But if you're looking for somebody to play, you know he's going to get the volume of touches, and you just hope that he can kind of do at least what he did against the Titans this past weekend. My repeat name from last week, obviously his roster availability kind of hovered around the same number just because the Packers were on a bye last week, so I understand why a lot of people didn't pick him up. But if you're looking for wide receiver help, I'd be looking at Romeo Doubs. He's only on 44.9% of the rosters right now. So far in the last 3 games, he's gotten at least 5 targets in 2 of the last 3 games. You want to see him get to the 7 to 9 target range before you trust him in your lineup. But the fact that it's either going to be him, Matthew Golden, or Tucker Kraft who lead the Packers in targets going forward, he's worth a roster ad. He's definitely worth a bench ad. If you needed somebody to play, I do think he does have a decent matchup this weekend. They are facing the Bengals, who have allowed the 11th most points per game against wide receivers. My tight end out of the week, the guy that's been balling ever since he officially made his return to the NFL with the Dolphins, Darren Waller. He's only on 48.4% of the rosters this as of right now. This past weekend against the Panthers, he had 5 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown on 5 targets. I do want to see him to get more targets, but he still offers that upside because Tyreek Hill is injured, so he's going to have a role within the passing attack, and he's obviously that big body presence in the red zone for Tua. So he's going to get those red zone targets where he can get those touchdowns, which, by the way, in the 2 games that he's played in this season, he does have 3 touchdowns. He does have a tough matchup this weekend going against the Chargers, who have allowed the 7th fewest points per game against tight ends. But I would still roll the dice on him. Waller is a high ceiling play at the tight end position who can at least get you a touchdown ideally on any given week. My flex ad of the week is also a tight end. I normally don't do tight ends as my flex ad, but there's just not a lot of great running backs or wide receivers I thought that were available that should be in the slot. And I also like what I've been seeing from the Giants tight end and Theo Johnson. He's only rostered on 5.6% of the rosters right now. This past weekend against the Saints, he had 6 receptions for 33 yards and he had 2 touchdowns on 7 targets. If you guys know me, once I see a tight end get 7 targets, I'm like, ooh, that does intrigue me as a potential waiver wire target. When you look at Johnson's last 4 games, he's gotten at least 5+ targets in 3 of the last 4 games. And as I always say too, all you sometimes need is your tight end to get you 5 points. And if a guy's getting at least 5 targets, ideally he catches those balls. So if you're in a half-point PPR league, full point PPR league, that does help you as well. And then it seems like he does have some chemistry with Jackson Dart, the rookie quarterback for the Giants. He has scored at least 1 touchdown in each game that Dart has been the starter. Now, with that being said, he does have a tough matchup. They're playing on a Thursday night against the Eagles. Eagles have allowed the 4th fewest points per game allowed, but if you are struggling at the tight end position, maybe you're in a deeper league, 12-14 team type of league, Johnson might be a guy for you to consider, especially with how much he's now getting targeted, and it does seem like Dart is looking his way, which rookie quarterbacks do tend to do is look at their tight end. So yeah, those are my top waiver wire targets for week 6. Moving into my top streamable defenses for week 6, just like the waiver wire targets, these defenses, they do have to have at least 50% roster availability on ESPN, so there's a good chance they're available. Before I dive into the list, I will say this, just because I put some waiver claims on them. Take a look on your waivers and see if maybe the Steelers are out there. They're playing the Browns this weekend. The Steelers were on a bye last week, so there's a chance that they got dropped in your league. So that's a defense I would consider, but they just don't qualify to be on this list, but I do have to suggest it since I put a waiver claim in on them. And I think 1 or 2, I know at least 1 league, I think maybe 2 leagues I got a claim in for the Steelers. With that being said though, Steelers not available. These are some defenses I do like. My number 1 defense of the week, I like the Rams against the Ravens. The Rams are only rostered on 48.2% of the rosters right now. It does sound like Lamar Jackson's likely not going to play this weekend. Basically what's going on with the Ravens is he's a hamstring injury. You don't want to have that turn into anything worse when the Ravens are going to have to try to claw their way back into the playoff picture for the rest of the season. So after they play the Rams this weekend, the Ravens are on a bye. So from all the reports, it sounds like the Ravens are basically going to limp their way into the bye week, try to get everybody healthy post bye week, and then try to go on a run. So the expectation is that Lamar is not going to play, which is why I have them as my number 1 defense. We saw what the Texans did against them last week. Then when you look at some stats, which could turn into a high ceiling play by playing the Rams. The Rams defense alone, they are tied for the 3rd most sacks in the NFL, and they're tied for the 5th most takeaways. And then they're going to be playing an offense in the Ravens who are tied for the 4th most sacks allowed, and they're tied for the 5th most turnovers. So I see this as the best option for people this weekend. Another defense I like the Packers against the Bengals. Packers are only on 46.1% of the rosters. This is a home game for the Packers. Now, I know maybe some people are kind of freaked out about Joe Flacco. If you guys haven't heard, Joe Flacco got traded to the Bengals, and it does sound like they're going to try to ramp him up and get him ready to play for the Bengals this weekend. But I'm not too concerned about that. I thought Joe Flacco got benched in Cleveland for a reason. He wasn't playing that great. And obviously, quarterbacks and wide receivers need chemistry. Do we really think Joe Flacco is going to develop chemistry with Chase and Higgins on 3 days worth of practice? I have my doubts about that happening, so I'm not too worried about playing the Packers against them. And then this is a good ceiling and a floor play for the Packers defense. The Cincinnati Bengals have the most turnovers in the NFL. They're tied for the 5th most sacks allowed. I'm looking for a big game out of Micah Parsons against the Bengals this weekend. And then what you also like about this as a floor play is the Bengals are scoring the 3rd fewest points per game. So they're not putting up a lot of points. They're giving the ball away and they're giving up sacks. And so that's why I like them this weekend. Next 2 defenses. I've done this before if you guys have been following along with me. Sometimes it's worth risking playing a defense in a matchup of very bad teams, because when very bad teams play against each other, weird things can happen. Fumble recoveries for touchdowns, punt return for touchdowns, stuff like that. So with that being said, the first defense in that matchup I do like the Titans against the Raiders. Titans are only rostered on 0.6% of the rosters right now. The Titans themselves as a defense, they're tied for the fourth most takeaways in the NFL. So despite being a bad team, they have been doing a good job as far as comparing the whole league as far as taking away the ball. Then they're going to be facing a Las Vegas Raiders who have turned the ball over the second most times in the NFL, mostly because Geno Smith has thrown like 10 picks, I think, or 9 or 10 picks in the first 5 games. They also are tied for the fourth most sacks allowed. And what also kind of gives you a floor if you do want to take a chance on the Titans defense this weekend is the Raiders are scoring the second fewest points per game this season. Staying in that matchup, I still even like the opposite team, the Raiders against the Titans. The Raiders only rostered on 1% of the rosters right now. This is a home game for the Raiders. Now, I know the Raiders' home games are not traditional because it's in Vegas. We saw when the Bears played them, there's a lot of Bears fans there. No offense to the Titans fans, but it doesn't seem like the Titans is a fan base that let alone travels well, but especially when your team is bad. So I'm kind of looking at this should be a traditional home game for the Raiders, having the home crowd advantage. And then what you like about them as far as their matchup, the offense that they're facing, the Titans have allowed the second most sacks in the NFL. So I like for the chance of Max Crosby having a big game. They're tied for the fifth most the Titans are tied for the fifth most turnovers, so ideally you want Max Crosby to get his hands on Cam Ward and force him into mistakes. And what gives him a floor as well is the Titans are tied for the fewest points per game in the NFL this season. My number 5 streaming defense, I thought about maybe ranking this higher, but the Chargers just haven't played that well of defense over the last couple of weeks. So that's why I have them below the Titans and the Raiders, even though I think the Chargers still have a better defense. But they're also playing an offense that could put up points if they got things rolling. But I still do like the Chargers. They're only on 35.2% of the rosters, facing a Dolphins offense that's been very inconsistent. One drive they look great, the next drive they look terrible. They're giving up sacks, Tua is throwing picks, and then what you like is the Chargers are tied for the fourth most sacks in the NFL, facing a very weak offensive line in Miami. So yeah, if I were to miss out on the top 4 defenses, I would take a chance on the Chargers and thinking that they can maybe get back on track as a defense against Miami this weekend. So yeah, those are my top waiver wire targets and streamable defenses for week 6 of this NFL season. As always, guys, if you enjoyed today's video, please hit the like button. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all my social media platforms. You can follow me at Cody Talks NFL. I'm mainly on X. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I'm also on TikTok and Instagram. And then as always, guys, you'll get me tomorrow night for my top starts and sits. So I'll talk to you then. Peace out.